So,
Joe, you
what?
forgot to take off
sorry.
your face mask
Sorry,
when
sorry.
you come back from the store.
Sorry, I wear this all the time.
Yeah.
Because of the COVID.
I know, 2 years of
Well-
non-stop face masks. It's
Well,
like,
you know, the COVID, you know, it's like, it's dangerous, you
yeah,
know.
it's out there. It could get you.
Well, anywhere, like, I mean, even in the house here, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of typhoid Marys like you running around, you know. I got to, but you, yeah. Well, anybody really. Very, very dangerous. So I take all precautions. And so I try to scare the virus. I use this one because it's kind of scary. It's to I think it might help to scare the virus away, you know. It's pretty scary, you know. So, but it's also Halloween, so that's why it's appropriate as well. And as you can probably see, we haven't really we didn't clean up for Halloween. It needs a bit of dusting around here, and I think there's a few spiders. And although we did keep up the pictures of Fauci, Tony Fauci. I've got two of his portraits there on the back wall. That's how he looks in real life. It's just a filter put on him for the TV cameras, but that's how he actually looks. Remember, we got those pictures of him. Anyway,
It's actually a replica of the portrait Tony Podesta did for him.
for Fauci.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real, found in Epstein's house.
Yeah. So yeah, what's going on? It's Halloween and everything's.
Everything's a freak
It's
show.
only Halloween in the Western world, right? Pretty much everybody else, or has that spread now? It's really only America and Anglo countries, right? I'm pretty sure most people today in the world are just going, whatever.
There's kind of equivalent things. I'm not sure that at the same time of the year.
Yeah.
Mexico has its Day
Day
of
of
the
the Dead, yeah,
thing.
but it's not exactly.
Oh wait, I think it is similar time of the year for Mexicans.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
There are
if you
different
include India and
routes, though.
China, that's half the world's population right there. Anyways, they're not doing it, I'd say.
They're not doing it. And France has only started doing it like
Yeah.
the last 10 years.
It's such
Happy Halloween. They didn't know about it like
it's such an
a generation ago.
an Anglo-American thing. There's so
Well,
much
Celtic too.
there's so much supremacy in it. So much white supremacy in Halloween. It should be
is.
banned.
It's a Celtic thing.
Celtic, white, whatever. It's all the same to me, man.
Ah, Jesus, come on.
In fact, Celtic is white, right? Weren't they all white? Whatever. Anyway, ban Halloween. Look at this. It's ridiculous.
It's just supremacist.
Well, it's just glorification of the patriarchy right
Well,
here.
at least we're not appropriating anyone else's culture.
Yeah, you are.
This is our culture, you know. Dusty cobwebs, spiders, spooky stuff.
Yeah.
We're showing a true face
Yeah.
as white people.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
what we really look like.
Yeah.
underneath.
What's the origin of Halloween?
Um,
Nobody knows, right?
in Ireland, it's Samhain.
Well, ever.
That's
But that's got nothing to do with Halloween. That's just a harvest festival type thing.
isn't it? Didn't it coincide with the same time period? Do you think it's just harvest? I
That's
thought
what
it was.
at this time of year. Yeah, there's harvest festivals and stuff like that, but there's nothing that explains Halloween the way we quote unquote celebrate it.
Well, then the way it is celebrated by, at least in the Eastern Europe, Slavic world, tomorrow's more important, and that was the case for Catholic France.
That's a
until
religious
recently.
holiday though.
All Hallows Day, All Hallows Eve.
That was put on top of, like most religious holidays were put on top of pre-existing kind of celebrations. They just made stuff up. So the question is, is there a deeper history to it? You know,
Yeah.
in terms of the pre-Celtic or not pre-Celtic, pre-modern era, like basically the ancient. You know, and it goes back far enough about some kind of a Day of the Dead or something that happened on that day or
Something-
around that time when a lot of people died for some reason. We tend to associate with some kind of a catastrophe or a global catastrophe or something that goes back maybe that long, when a lot of people died. And obviously it gets so distorted and so messed up over thousands of years. Like, you know, it's actually interesting that it survived even with that motif, you know, of dead people, scary, you're all gonna die, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really that you're all gonna die, but it's associated with dead people, right?
Well, because it's both a traumatic collective memory,
Yeah.
and there's another factor, a kind of thinning of the veil, quasi-mystical
Yeah.
claim to it, that there's an X factor to the time period, or at least the event that people at some point were remembering.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the weird factor, you know. The dressing up and spookiness isn't just completely random.
Mm.
There is probably some sound reason to it.
Yeah. Well,
Not sure about the candy though. That's just for display purposes.
yeah.
That's definitely an American.
That's just to give you diabetes. They want to ruin everything. They want to ruin all our holidays by giving people diabetes on their holidays. An interesting take by Twix. I think it was this year actually. Yeah, Twix. You know, the favorite diabetes-inducing consumable. Just throw it up there. Actually, it's actually funny. Well, it's funny in a dystopian kind of meh, oh my god kind of way. Let's just play it there and you'll see.
Twix presents Bite-Sized Halloween.
Hi. I'm your new nanny.
I don't need a nanny.
Well, your parents seem to think you do.
Definitely needs someone.
What's your favorite color?
Black.
Other than black.
Oh, charcoal.
Why are you all dressed up? It's not Halloween yet.
Can I help you?
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
Do you want to find out? You buckled?
I'm still wearing my princess dress.
Do you want to wear it? Okay.
Hey, you! Princess! You look like a girl. Why are you wearing that?
Dressing like this makes me feel good.
Is that your nanny? She looks weird. You look weird, your nanny looks weird, you guys are both weird.
No, we're just different.
Boys don't wear dresses.
Whoa!
Whoa! Where is it coming from? What's happening?
Whoa!
We should go.
And they all lived.
Will he come back?
Yeah, probably. Come on.
And they all lived happily ever after, thanks to Twix. So it's Halloween all year round for trans kids. That's the idea, right? Because the girls had initially said to him, "What are you dressed like that for? It's not Halloween yet." And he said, "Whatever, I like it." So it's Halloween all year round for trans kids, who, especially the little boys who want to dress up like girls, and be encouraged by their peers to do so. And also the kid that came along, he was, I don't know if he was killed or he was seriously injured by the peer, by the adult, because but he was injured or killed because he made a couple of objective statements. He said, he asked the question, why are you dressed like that? It's weird. It is.
I think in the parlance he was being transphobic.
No, he was just saying that why you dress like that is weird, and it is weird for a boy to see another boy dressed as a girl.
Yeah.
But he got killed for it, or he got seriously injured for it. So that's what Twix is promoting there. That's what Halloween means, at least for the people at Twix. Is it's all about transgender rights or something, and
It could have been it's bizarre. It could have been worse though. It could have been a 6 foot tall dude in drag who came to the door and said, "Hi, I'm your nanny."
yeah,
You know,
that'll be next year.
yeah.
Happy Halloween. So
Is that probably a standard? I mean, that's just a random corporate ad. Is it? We don't watch TV.
it's becoming more common.
Is it? Is
Yeah.
that a kind of common theme? Like
Well,
day
they're
to
all
day, 9 to 5. No, all 24/7.
they're all, dipping their toes in that water. All the different product manufacturers are paying homage to the to that kind of thing, wokeism, whatever you want to call it, because so many people support in the world support that. I suppose we have to assume, and that's why Twix is interested, because obviously only interested in money, right? So they don't want to lose the sales to people who support transgender kids,
Right, but
which is
that's-
so many people. Right? It's got to be lots,
isn't the case, obviously.
millions, hundreds of millions.
Their market isn't asking for it.
So what are they doing it for then? Because they're stupid.
It's
Are they
bizarre.
stupid? Are they just stupid people? It's a good. It's increasingly a good answer to a lot of questions today. When you see stuff like that and anything else, the answer is it's just stupidity. There's no other explanation. I mean, of course, you can spin it into some kind of dystopian Orwellian plot or whatever that they're trying to impose on the planet and stuff, but I like to say it's just stupid. They're idiots, but they're dangerous idiots. So,
Especially if they're doing it together, you know.
yeah.
They're all having the same bright ideas. That's what's freaky about it.
Yeah.
That's why I have to ask, you know, how common do people, like, is it wall to wall like that? You know?
No, it's not all the time, but it's enough to make an impact. Speaking of masks, as we were talking about earlier on, just go to tweet. It's on Twitter. It's a video of Angela Merkel arriving at COP, I think, right? Yeah. No, she's not. She's in Rome, I think, maybe. Anyway, what's going on this weekend is G20 meetings in Rome of all the.
It's just ended, but yeah, that
It
was over the
was
last 2 days.
over the past couple of days, over the weekend, and today, then they're all flying up to Glasgow for the Green New Deal stuff. But this is interesting. This is just to give you an idea of the farce that the whole thing is, and you know, so anybody out there who's recognizing that this whole thing is ridiculous, it's stupid, and it's a farce, and nobody can take this seriously, you're right, and don't ever stop believing the evidence before your eyes, because here's some of the evidence before your eyes. I'm sure you've seen lots of other evidence to convince you that this is a complete farce, and it's a nefarious farce that is having some seriously negative impacts on the planet, but on society. But anyway, it's still a farce. You can start from there. So let's just see. This is Angela Merkel arriving at the conference hall in Rome yesterday, probably. Let's just see what she does with her mask. Super serious COVID pandemic.
All the guards wearing masks.
Yep. Merkel sticks it on, walks down the red carpet, into the conference hall.
Pomp and circumstance.
So everybody knows once you get inside where there are people and close spaces, you take your mask off and then you touch other people. That's how you prevent the COVID, right?
I'm confused. Wasn't she voted out of office or left or what?
Not yet. There's some kind of
She seems to
transition
be
going on.
always leaving.
Yeah. But anyway, isn't that, don't you remember the rules? On the
mask on,
no,
mask off,
on the
this one.
transmission of the virus and how to prevent it. When you're outside,
Don't touch your face like that.
when you're outside, wear your mask outside. But once you get inside to a place you've never been before, where there are other people, that's when you take your mask off and you start touching other people, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the rule? Don't you remember that from the beginning?
No.
It was the opposite,
Yeah.
right?
I think
Okay.
always. No.
It's hard. It's hard for Angela to keep track of it. Is the problem?
Yeah.
She doesn't know when she should put it on, when she should put it off. I think she's basically guided by the cameras. Although there's cameras inside as well. I don't know. Maybe it was walking past the guards or something. A photo op moment. Put on your mask.
I've seen the meet and greet.
Yeah.
Maybe not at that point, but somewhere else during the event. And when they have 5 or 6 leaders up there, they do. Someone in the press calls, okay, thanks for that. Now we'll do the same again, mask down.
Right.
And they all take it off together, and they take the same shot.
So one with masks on, one with masks
Yeah.
off. Right.
There's protocols
So it's all propaganda, basically.
for PR, yeah.
It's
To give the
blatant
right,
propaganda.
yeah. But again, they see it, they will say it's to give the correct impression.
But they're given, what impression are they given? Wear your mask always. Sometimes don't wear it. Sometimes do. When should you? When should you? And when should you not? When people see, when they take a picture of the same event, the same group of people, masks on and masks off, what message is that giving? See what I'm saying?
They don't want it to look too closely. You're supposed to only see the people don't watch those events and listen to
Right,
what
they
comes
see
out of
pictures.
those events. They see pictures,
Right.
and they just see photos
Yeah.
of masks.
That's the level.
More
we're at,
photos
yeah.
of masks. That's all.
There's so many people out there who are not paying attention to this at all in any way whatsoever. Not
No.
even in the briefest cursory examination of
That's
any of
why
what's going on.
I know a lot of people are pointing at doing that since the beginning. Whenever world leaders meet, look at the hypocrisy, because masks on, masks off. Masks are off when they're off stage, and then they're filmed going on to give the lecture at the press conference, mask on. At that point, just as they walk in, they start to give their comments, mask come down, wash their hands. Ritual.
Yeah.
For PR purposes.
It's ritual.
But yeah, and again, it just underscores the fact that they know it's not so bad. They know it's not a killer virus. They wouldn't be going out and meeting
Right.
and flying all over the place.
So there's another agenda here. Obviously, our work has been from the very beginning. This didn't just segue into another agenda that they decided, oh, look, we can serve this agenda, but after this real pandemic suddenly came upon us, it would suggest that the whole thing from the very beginning was part of a scheme in a certain sense, or very soon after the start of this so-called pandemic, a new idea was hit upon, or someone had a bright idea, or it was planned beforehand, whatever. But right from the very beginning, they were talking about another agenda.
Yes, with the one caveat that at the beginning of this, many of them genuinely were spooked.
Yeah.
And I'm presuming that unless there really are like a super species elite, that they more or less behaved as most of the population, 95% of the population genuinely was spooked and jumped. How high, sir, whatever you want, sir, at the very beginning. So it probably applies to them as well.
Speaking of propaganda in relation to COVID and all things COVID, just go to the next post-millennial tweeted this one. Again, the post-millennial, I think, what kind of website is that? News, knowledge, and opinion from Canada, US, and the world among North American.
It's based as opposed to woke.
Okay.
So of the right.
So it's of the right, and it would be against
regime critical.
Right. Okay. So, but I mean, again, there's nobody left standing at this point in terms of understanding what is actually going on and what has been going on from the very beginning. There's pretty much very few people left standing. Post-millennial says Kamala gets a third shot of the vaccine. We'll just play it there just so you can get the visuals.
Okay, yeah. And just relax your arm next to your body for me. Roll up a little bit harder for me now. Right there. On 3. 1, 2, and 3. That is it now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I got the booster shot, and I want to encourage everyone to do the same when you are eligible. And as we have said from the beginning, the vaccines are free, they are safe, and they will save your life.
All right. They're free.
And someday you do.
Available and save your life. So first and foremost, the main thing to say about that is that she didn't get a vaccine there. Just like Joe Biden didn't get a vaccine
at the White House.
At the White House, which was actually just a prop for the
Looks
White
like
House.
The same place wherever that was filmed.
Right, probably some town hall meeting with 20 people or something.
It's a
like
set they built across the street from the White House.
Right. Yeah, probably. She didn't get that, just like Biden didn't get it. Like no other leader or president or prime minister or whoever got the vaccine live on camera, because that doesn't happen. This vaccine has, however small, has a risk to anybody who gets it from immediate adverse reaction, however small. So you don't roll the cameras and then give a leader of the free world or leader anywhere any kind of a medication that runs a risk of them falling over and presenting extremely bad press for the thing that they're promoting.
Yeah.
So you simply don't do it.
Yeah.
So the fact that people don't realize that, it's just it's not even a conspiracy theory. It's a
standard protocol.
It's a practical thing you would
Yeah.
do. You would do it from a practical point of view. You just don't want to run the risk of giving any kind of medication like that to someone live on camera. So, but yet people believe it and people repeat it and say, "Look, she got her third she got her third shot. She got her booster shot. She didn't."
I suspect, knowing the track record of post-millennial, they stated that that's the given fact that's being reported as bait, because they know they're going to get a lot of people in the comments who are going to say, "No, she didn't."
Yeah.
So,
well,
still, most people will believe it.
Yeah,
So,
for sure, and that's the unfortunate unfortunate situation we're in. Why is my... Okay. Yeah. I have a problem with what's going on in the world today.
Let's hear it.
Did you know that? Did you ever get that impression?
No, you seem cool, relaxed. You know,
Yeah.
going with the flow.
Yeah. Just rolling with the punches, you mean? People know this. Most people who are listening to the show and there's a significant number of people out there know this, that there's something very wrong with the whole vaccination campaign, the way it's been rolled out. You have to assume that the governments, in the way that they've rolled it out, insisting on vaccination for everyone and demonizing anybody in different ways who doesn't want to get the vaccination, and including firing them from their jobs, preventing them from participating in society in different ways and stuff. It's creating a segregation or a separation, a division amongst people in society, which is a very bad thing to do in any societies, to divide the population
Absolutely.
against each other.
And an awful lot of psychological pressure.
Right,
on
and
people.
they don't need to do that. The thing is, there's no reason for them to do that. To take that extreme measure, which is has potentially very negative impacts or implications for society, you have to have a very good reason for doing it. You don't have a good reason for doing it because, like I said, the thing they're doing is trying to force, manipulate, etc. Everybody in society to bribe everybody in society to get vaccinated, and demonizing those who don't. Because, as we've said from the very beginning on these shows and from the very beginning of this pandemic, this virus is not dangerous to the vast majority of people. There's no need for them to be vaccinated against it. Yet the government has decided that they're going to push that message that there is a need for everybody, like Kamala just said there, it'll save your life. She makes this blanket statement. That get this vaccination because it will save your life. Not that it can save your life or it might save your life. It will save your life. I.e., you're going to die if you... The message is you're going to die if you don't get the vaccination. It's extreme bullshit. Extremist bullshit.
Medical misinformation.
Medical misinformation. It's completely false. And everybody can verify that by looking outside your door, going to your local town now, and recognize that, depending on where you are, 20-30% of the population around you are not vaccinated. So where are all the dead bodies? These people aren't dying. And I'll go back to last year before the vaccination campaign was rolled out and tell me where all the bodies are. Obviously, the fact that this virus is not dangerous to the vast majority of people is an unassailable fact. You cannot disagree with it. It's self-evident. So to turn around and say that everybody has to get the vaccination or you will die or you will kill other people, blah, blah, blah.
Or
it's
we will
completely
make your
false.
life living hell.
Yeah. It's completely false. So, yeah. Why can't people see that? I don't know. Not only that, there's plenty of evidence that the vaccination campaign itself is very likely driving the continued mutation or the further mutations of the virus compared to if it was just allowed to do what viruses normally do, which is just spread throughout the population. And sure, it'll kill some people, but so does the flu, so do colds, etc. Different respiratory viruses do that all the time. Nobody ever cared before. You just let it go and do its normal thing. Again, on the proviso or on the understanding that it's dangerous to only the same people that the flu is dangerous to, and you eventually have a kind of herd immunity because the virus basically is not wiped out, but it becomes endemic in the population. It takes its place alongside the flu. It's no longer a problem. But by vaccinating the entire population, you drive kind of mutations and possibly recombination down the line, because especially with the mRNA vaccines, as we've said before, anybody who's been listening knows this already, that with the mRNA vaccines, they induce your own cells to produce a spike protein, i.e. a part of the virus that runs a significant risk at some point down the line of it recombining that part of the virus that you've induced your cells to produce, can recombine down the line with other adenoviruses, whatever, and produce some kind of something that is really seriously dangerous to the population. So across the board, there's no reason for it whatsoever. It's actually the potential or the impacts of it obviously are negative on society from a psychological and social cohesion point of view, and from a health point of view, they're also quite potentially very negative. And that's not even speaking about vaccine adverse reactions, of which there have been many. So yeah, I don't know. That's just what I'm not happy about.
It's a big problem, right? So are you thinking here of why then the one consistency is that governments, media, all functionaries of government are pushing this?
Yeah.
Why? Do you revert back to what you said earlier? They're just being stupid collectively? There must be some logic, some central logos they're driving.
Well, there's
a lot of people share.
A lot of people who are buying into it and are pushing it are stupid because they couldn't think their way out of a wet paper bag. They don't pay attention. They have no sense of independent thought, independent investigation. They don't have a healthy distrust of government, so they go along with the narrative. So they're stupid people because the narratives they're being given are completely stupid and provably false, but these people go along with them and act on them as if they were a valid narrative, right? So the, let's say, lower level functionaries, that kind of stuff, people, anybody in society who's promoting it and pushing it and going along with the plan, right? I'm going to get my third booster because Kamala got hers. You know, I mean, anyway, they're wrong on so many levels. You know what I mean? Yeah. But above that, the people, if we're talking about the people who have been pushing this, who have engineered this plan or came up with this plan and are putting it into place, what's their agenda? Well, the proof is in the pudding. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say, and the end result, if they continue with it, will be the destruction of many lives in society.
As an intended outcome.
Well,
it's hard to.
Oops, it was an accident. I don't know. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
When someone goes to a lot of bother and puts in a lot of effort and talks about something over and over and over again and tries to force it and manipulate people into accepting it, and then the outcome is the destruction of lives in one way or another, how can you not say it was intentional?
Yeah.
But that's a big conspiracy theory, right? They're out to get us. They're trying to kill us.
Well, it's understandable why it's so prevalent.
Yeah.
What else can people revert to? Because the only other unsatisfactory explanation is that they have some intention that is noble, that is unspoken, but it will produce the opposite outcome to what is intended. Right. Because of corruption, greed, psychopathy, namely the wrong types of people are in power at this time, and ideological extremes that they believe.
So the noble intention would be obviously to save people, but again, I can't go with that because it goes against all the science, right? They're trying to vaccinate children here. You know, the FDA just approved vaccination for under 12-year-olds, and you know, all of the data, and I mean all of it, all of the scientific data over the past almost 2 years, getting on for 2 years now, shows that children are virtually immune to this, but they want to vaccinate them anyway. Why? Children don't spread it. They don't get sick from it. Why do they want to do that? So the idea of it being for public health, you have to throw that out. I'm sorry, you can't use that as a positive but misguided intention.
Yeah.
Because they're not stupid. You know, there's a lot of ordinary stupid people out there, but the people in positions of power who are pushing this agenda are not stupid enough to just like, oops, we didn't see that data on children that they're basically immune and therefore don't need the vaccine.
Yeah.
So and also that the vast majority of people, healthy people, don't need the vaccine either. They could have brought society together. If they wanted to do the vaccination campaign, they would have had to do a limited vaccination campaign only on the people who were in danger from it, and they would have brought everybody together in society to say this is a good thing, and everybody would have lobbied for their elderly, ill or sick or friends, family members, whatever, to get it. But the vast majority of people wouldn't have got it. But then that means the vast majority of people wouldn't have got the vaccine, and vast amounts of money would not have been made by pharmaceutical companies. So that doesn't really work right. So the one that they spun this into a positive, and this, you have to get a bit convoluted in this, I suppose, but the positive reason for pushing the whole vaccination campaign and pushing the pandemic and scaring people and stuff is the thing that they segued into quite quickly last year, which was into a green agenda, a greening of the global economy, renewables, going away from fossil fuels to save the planet. So it wasn't about saving individual lives from COVID, because, it's not. But you could somehow, if you really do some mental gymnastics, you could say that they realized they had to use that to convince people to change the way of life. So they used the pandemic, a phony pandemic effectively, in order to get people to change their behavior.
Yeah.
That was in line with the kind of behavior they would engage in order to save the planet. So that's the agenda.
Restrictions on their uses of energy.
On movement for a start.
Yeah.
And so the two don't seem very compatible, on the face of it, how you would mesh the two, how they're very, they're one and the same thing almost, but they've done that. They're trying hard to segue from one into the other and say that it's an obvious transition or a natural transition, which is what they're doing this weekend in Glasgow, right?
Yeah.
COP.
COP26. But you've already mentioned it, so I would prefer to do this first before we look at Glasgow. The FDA approval.
Right, yeah.
Scotty, can you throw up the last link I sent you? So one of the few websites, God bless them, Off Guardian, that have been on this since the beginning. Kit Knightley, editor there, has written this summary. The headline is, "There's no case for vaccinating children, ... and the FDA meeting approves it." So what he did was scroll down a bit. He watched the 8-hour live stream, anyone could watch it, of the FDA's meeting that approved the vaccine for children this week. Okay, the entire meeting was live streamed. There it is. 8 hours. Well, who wants to watch it? Thankfully, he summarized what... Let's go scroll down a bit further. Here's the bullet points. So it's mentioned in the FDA's own approval. That's bullet point number 1. Seroprevalence studies suggest that as of June 2021, that's 4 months ago now, almost half of 5 to 11-year-olds have been exposed to COVID. And by that, seroprevalence presumably means not that they got the COVID, but that they have SARS-CoV-2 antibodies at some point in the last 18 months. I make that presumption because in the next bullet point, it says roughly 1.9 million COVID cases. Presumably, in that sense, actual symptoms of COVID-19 have been reported in the same age group. So that's 42% of 5 to 11-year-olds in the United States. That is probably a low ball estimate that can be extrapolated out globally. Most, if not at least half the people out there have already been tested to some extent and shown to have natural antibodies. Right there, you're saying there's no need to then vaccinate them. So the FDA, despite mentioning these studies, seroprevalence studies, in this live stream, well, at the end they said, no, we approve it. In that time, I think that's only the US, 94 children have died. And probably look at them, and every single one of them were probably with extreme other illnesses. Let's scroll down a little bit more.
Go up that tweet, Scotty. It is clearly not a benign illness in kids, and there are major racial disparities in terms of which kids get sick. Yeah, bring in race, you fucking idiots.
The virus is racist.
That's a professor. He's the kind of idiot that I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? He couldn't think his way of a wet paper bag. People need to get on. People need to accept the fact that a lot of scientists, most professors, most educated, smart people, you might have, seen them as until now, are not smart when it comes down to it. They're good at regurgitating information.
Yeah.
And if they're regurgitating bullshit, then they're a problem.
Yeah. And from week to week, they'll change tune based on
what they're told.
The signal that they think.
Because they're looking at authorities all the time to tell them what to do or tell them what to think. Yeah, so basically, it's a joke. 94 deaths out of 13.4 million people gives an overall survival rate of 99.994%. So why do kids need vaccination? 99.994%. And if you take away that 0.6%, of kids who have died because they had some kind of genetic disorder or comorbidities, then that means 100%.
Yeah.
Or 0% of dying, of going to hospital, even needing to go to hospital, is 99.86. Survival of 100% survival for kids. But let's vaccinate them all. Let's approve a vaccine. Why would we be doing that? Well, just go right now. Go with money.
Well,
Obviously
someone pointed
money.
out in the chat, Pfizer is on the FDA and vice versa.
Right.
There is not even
No
the
daylight
pretense anymore of
between them.
separation of powers between corporations and governments. So,
Yeah. So
we mentioned it briefly last week, but Canada and the US have done massive buy orders from Pfizer. Pfizer only
yeah, Pfizer really got on.
for all 5 to 11-year-olds.
Pushed them all out,
in
pushed the rest
Canada
out.
and the US.
Yep.
To get at least 2 jabs in the next year. It's
And speaking of Canada, today is the deadline for people in Canada to be vaccinated or no travel. Trains, planes,
no travel within Canada even.
yeah, or leaving Canada. You're locked into the country basically. Not only you're locked in the country, you're locked into your own. If you don't have a car, you're locked into your own locale. Locked into your town as far as you can walk, basically, or bicycle, or float down a river. Yes, that's obviously it's totalitarian. It's ridiculous. And you just have to call it what it is. Might be scary, but call it what it is. Gotta look the scary thing. This Halloween, let's look the scary things in the face and not be afraid.
Yeah, let's
And
encourage
call them what they are.
Let's encourage others. We've been doing it for
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's do it, all you people out there. Yeah, but
and then you contrast it with these world leaders and massive entourages flying all over the world. There's no restrictions.
Joe Biden.
There's a potential
Do we have
face
him?
mask. Let's look at Biden arriving in Rome this week.
to save the planet. Well, he wasn't there to save the planet. He was there to talk about
The
Catholicism and stuff.
agendas were blurred.
Yeah,
They were
between the two.
Yeah, again, as it's hard to separate COVID and building back better from saving the planet
Yeah.
agenda. So this is Biden arriving in Rome. This is just some of his entourage. Play that video. There he is in the Beast, the green car that his green former buddy Obama first used.
It's green, is it?
It's green, yeah. I know it isn't.
$85 cars.
That's not even all of it. Ostensibly because in Italy there's a restriction against more than 4 people driving in a car at any one time.
Right.
They had to spread it out.
But that's where it conflicts with the saving the planet, right? COVID requirements mean that you have to burn more carbon, or increase your carbon footprint, right? At least in his case, you have to burn more fossil fuels in all those cars because of COVID.
Right, but in most cases, most people aren't running around. He had an entourage of 800 people. 800 people came from DC
Yeah,
with Biden
to
for
fly
this.
them there, yeah, on the planes.
Most of us don't have such an entourage. So in general, because of the restrictions, indeed, there's been a massive drop-off in the amount of energy that people need,
Yeah, I've been using
So,
it. Yeah, well, yeah. So but today they're all heading for Glasgow, yeah.
Yes.
COP26, and up there they're using biodiesel, right?
Yeah.
What was the deal with that? That they wanted to, we talked about this last week. I think they want the Glen Eagles Hotel where there's 25,000 people coming from around the world, delegates. 25,000 people are flying, most of them, to Glasgow, in order to talk about how we can stop using airline fuel. 25,000. It's the annual. Is it every year? No.
I think so. No. Yes, it is.
It is every year, yeah.
It is every year.
So
But every 5 years, it's a special one.
It's
This is a special one.
This is a special one.
Where they have to agree on something
So it's an annual
to push it forward.
It's an annual exercise in mind programming 25,000 people, all movers and shakers in their different countries and domains. around a green agenda,
Including Greta, the climate expert from
to destroy the
Norway?
to destroy the planet. Yeah,
Sweden.
and yeah, to save the planet by destroying it.
Well, they'll probably see it as well. That's far less than the amount of people who we stopped from flying last year and therefore saved. We have a carbon deficit, a surplus that we can spend.
Oh, we can spend
for
it.
them.
Shouldn't you be saving it
Well, they're meeting to
sort out all the problems?
Yeah.
Because they're going to sort out all the problems. Yeah. So basically, at the hotel that they're going to, the the hotel they stay in is about an hour's drive to the conference center
Yeah.
or wherever it is, and they were ferrying them back and forth every day
in electric cars,
in Teslas
Yeah.
to promote electric cars,
which are green,
because you
in quotes.
mine a shitload of minerals and create all sorts of pollution as a result of making electric cars. Anyway, but they didn't have the charging stations.
They had nowhere near enough.
They only had one, I think, at the hotel.
Yeah,
So what did they do?
they brought in generators.
Diesel generators, right?
Apparently not.
No. Why? What was it?
They went semi-green. They brought in biodiesel generators,
Biodiesel, and that's better than diesel.
vegetable oil.
That's vegetable oil.
Apparently, it's better.
It's better, and do you know how it's better?
It's not
Do you know?
oil.
Do you know what makes it a green fuel?
It's been reused. It was used
No.
to make your dinner first, and now
not-
it's going to fuel the
no,
car.
No, the main reason that it's a green fuel is because it's derived from plants, and plants sequester CO2. So the more you use of it, the more you'd have to plant. It itself is polluting, but because it comes from plants, in theory, when you use up the crops, the corn or whatever it is, or sunflowers, then you have to replant them, and they'll take care of the climate problem and the volcanoes and the earthquakes. Plant more sunflowers and stop
Yeah.
volcanoes.
Except
That lava in the La Palma volcano, it's because you didn't plant enough sunflowers.
Right.
Just remember that, and be ashamed. Yeah, that's true. I looked it up actually. The US government considers biodiesel to be carbon neutral because the plants that are the sources of the feedstocks for making biodiesel, such as soybeans and palm oil trees, absorb carbon dioxide as they grow. That's what gives it its green status.
Yeah, but the spread of big agriculture in the 20th century was surely one of the single largest
Yeah, for sure.
uses of fossil fuels.
Yeah, and how did you make that happen?
Nitrogen growth,
From-
fertilizer,
From
oil.
right. Don't talk about those things. They
It's-
hurt my brain.
The
When-
whole
when you start-
subject.
when you
This is
start-
why I'm like this. The whole subject
When you
is
scratch the
so
sur-
freaking every way in.
Contradictory.
There's no logic. It has it. You can appreciate that it has its own internal logic.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting here. We're kind of being sarcastic, and we're trying to relay the story, the model of the world as they see it.
Mhm.
And of course, we keep getting stumped because there are all these background assumptions that produce contradictions that actually undermine
What they
the
say.
rationale of why they say what they do.
Mhm.
The reason why it's hard to even pretend to get in sync with their story is because it's so opposite in total to where they say it's going. They say it's going to a better world, a safer world, a greener world, a more stable one, a less chaotic one. It's in fact accelerating the opposite. It's chaos.
Right.
Arguably, even we think we're probably the outlier in this, that there's a direct connection between increasing climate chaos and what they're doing, which is definitely going to be a hard sell, because how do you can't, it's very difficult to explain in material terms. Part of their issue is that they think they've spent the last 4 decades studying in detail, and they've done enough. The science is settled, right? We've got it now. We have the big picture. They have their model of the biosphere as a whole. They have all the inputs and the outputs. They know what causes roughly this to cause that, to cause this chain reaction. and what the overall, and then they know that if we just tweak these inputs down here, namely emissions, bring them down, that'll bring down temperature, that'll calm down the life cycle of water, there'll be less intense deluges, there'll be less desertification over the blah, blah, blah. It's bullshit. Their model is purely materialistic. It is not based on an accurate representation of what's been happening.
Well,
it does not explain increasing volcanic activity.
No, or earthquakes.
Or even just changing patterns in the water cycle. It cannot account for jet stream meandering.
Yeah. So it's a superstition, really.
It's it's a superstition. It's an extremely narrow-minded view of science and the world. The Gaia, that they just they elevate themselves to God like that. We're going to save Gaia because us and Gaia, we're like, hermanos. We understand each other. They don't have the first fainting clue that the jet stream is largely influenced by cosmic, solar
by the sun,
influences.
Yeah. Well, they must. Some of them must do, and there is obviously that out there that science is out there, but it tends to be ignored in favor of the anthropogenic or human-centered cause to everything. It's like narcissism gone crazy, off the rails. We are the end and the beginning and the end. The alpha and the omega of everything. It all revolves around human beings, and obviously the political elite see themselves as the final arbiters of pretty much everything. But like to see themselves as the final arbiters of pretty much everything. But in terms of what you were saying about us being outliers, in terms of our explanation that this kind of misrule and destructive policies by leaders bring on, in a certain sense, in some strange way, a science that we don't know anything about. It doesn't really exist at this point, although it does exist in history, most notably recorded in the idea of the mandate of heaven.
Yeah, the ancient China.
I mean, and that, there's historical records showing that catastrophes beset the human population on the planet in the aftermath or immediately around the time of significant or serious misrule by leaders, So it was an idea that was held to for a very long time in human societies, that whenever leaders were corrupt and evil and abused their power, that quickly led to you could say it was just coincidence, but
no, not likely. They probably extracted those observations based on recurrence, based on just watching what actually happens.
Right.
And they write down stuff like the sky darkened, the crops failed. Yeah. Things went cold and dark for a long period of time.
That's all true, but that can be correlated with actual events. But what I'm saying is they're linking it with a misrule.
Yeah,
could be coincidence. You know what I mean? There's that idea, that concept of misrule leading to those kind of events. You know what I mean? But like I said, historians would say, well, that was just kind of coincidence. It just happened to be that at that point in time you had a lot of chaos, a lot of corruption in a country and a government, and then it led to coincidentally, you had a major volcanic eruption or a major earthquake or tsunamis, whatever, that destroyed whole civilizations at certain points in time, But it's something to keep your eye on, and I suppose you'll find out afterwards. If it so happens that over the next, in a short period of time after this extreme misrule by global leaders, we end up in some kind of a major foobar, from the point of view of earth changes or any of the things I just mentioned, then we'll know that, hey, those people way back when, they were onto something. So, yeah, just throw up, before we move on straight into the COP thing and the green agenda and stuff, there's one thing I forgot to mention about people being stupid. And even smart people, although this one's pretty old, put up Chomsky there. People already know probably that Chomsky has been saying some rather stupid things over the past while about COVID. But here he said a few days ago, the unvaccinated should just remove themselves from society. How can we get food to them, asks Chomsky. Well, that's actually their problem. So here we have a guy who, is probably, who knows what people know him for or as.
Well, in the 60s, he was a libertarian.
Exactly. Well, for me, I know him as the guy who wrote a book called Manufacturing Consent, which argues that the mass communication media in the US and around the world are effective and powerful ideological institutions that carry out a system-supportive propaganda function by reliance on market forces, internalized assumptions, and self-censorship without overt coercion, by means of a propaganda model of communication. So basically what he was saying was that, government institutions manipulate, lie to, and in that way coerce people into doing things that are not good for them. And he wrote a whole book about it.
His old self just described the last 18 months.
Right. And his new self, for some reason, has totally lost the plot. Maybe it's because he's, what is he, like, he's in his 90s now, 92. Can you put it down to that? I don't know. He still seems quite erudite and coherent when he talks. Certainly coherent enough to be able to say that the unvaccinated should be left to starve. So yeah, that's an example of, what I was saying earlier on, is that, you have to come to terms, people have to come to terms with the idea that people who are otherwise very intelligent and, held up as, reference points for different things are not infallible, and often can be extremely stupid in what they say, that they have massive blind spots, and their intelligence, it doesn't serve them very well, it seems, when it really matters. In good times, when it challenges
their beliefs.
Right.
You can follow Chomsky on a specialized topic and go, yeah, totally. U.S. imperialism, CIA wars, CIA torture, 70s, 80s, into the 90s. And then, well, for me, I was perplexed why he just, at the time, it makes sense in hindsight because it was totally impolitic to discuss 9/11 and any anomalous activity that day. But at the time, he just dismissed it, like wave of the hand, in several months afterwards. But then I got another kind of red flag when I went, oh, he's ardently against any suggestion that there was a conspiracy involved in the assassination of JFK.
Right.
Even though it's on the record.
Yeah.
In some cases, with one legal precedent, I think, where a court did rule in a different case that there was valid grounds in a civil trial, not a criminal trial. And that dismissive thing, was okay.
Yeah. Well, here's a guy who like,
his intelligence just goes to zero once a belief comes in.
Conflicts with a certain belief. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he argued for most of his career, or a big part of his career was arguing the case for, like you just said, the CIA torturing people and launching wars and manipulations, wars to effectively manipulate people and manipulate the policy in various countries, and using terrorism effectively to manufacture consent in one way or another. And but for some reason, that idea that forms a big part of his whole his
that model,
his belief and his understanding of how the world works it's not possible to apply that to the current situation, when the only thing you have to do is replace bombs and war with
Raytheon,
with a manufactured virus
and Pfizer,
and you have exactly the same thing. But he can't see it. That's why I don't understand how he can't see it. Surely you should just be able to see the pattern. Once you see the pattern, then you can assume,
plug it in.
Yeah,
for this,
right?
This,
it works. It works. It works for this. When the results, when you see the effects, you can assume that if you're seeing those effects or those results, then the cause is. You should, at the very least, investigate whether or not the cause is the same.
Yeah,
as it was in previous instances with a different methodology. But weird. Anyway, just another example of why you should really not believe people like former authorities, let's say, on certain topics. Anyway, back to COP. Yeah, you mentioned a notable girl there. Just stick up the Independent article there, Scotty. This is, so this is starting today, COP. Greta's mobbed. So this is, you can play it if you want. Get a glimpse of her. A little whippet stuck in the middle there. People. That ginger guy, the daywalker, he's protecting them. she is with a mask on. Her teenage friends are all going to save the planet. All right. Greta, save us. Save us, Greta.
What are they thinking? That maybe if they touch her garment,
Probably, yeah.
some of her,
They'll reduce their carbon footprint.
yeah, I guess
Yeah. They'll go green. They'll go
turn green.
fully green. Yeah. They'll go Hulk. No, they'll go fully green, yeah. They'll absorb some of our greenness. Anyway, yeah, here you have at this international climate carbon reduction conference and how to radically change the world economy without killing people or with killing lots of people. And the person who's mobbed the most is an 18-year-old autistic girl. Autistic spectrum girl.
Yeah.
We want to know what she has to say. She says, I think I saw her quoted as saying that 1.2 degrees Celsius increase could be coming sometime soon. Greta says.
Greta, right?
1.2.
She
ran the models herself
Uh-huh.
and came up with that
Oh, well, I think she's
on her, what do you call it?
chalkboard.
Doodle sketch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sketch.
Well, she's either very well read, up to date with their IPCC reports and whatnot, or she's maybe, like in times past.
Maybe she's a cyborg. And
Oh, well, maybe she's a cyborg, but maybe then she's also has the Midas touch of kind of special religious freaks from days of past, like not quite Joan of Arc, but
yeah.
there were all kinds of people that ended up being put on pedestals because, like a Fatima in Portugal, 1917.
Yeah, yeah.
Those kids, I mean, they were mobbed in their time for having some connection with something they thought with God.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a similar kind of secular version of she's communicating from a divine level. She's divinating effectively.
Yeah.
She's not a
Divining.
super genius. She's not a scientist.
But she's...
But she doesn't need to be. She has the
Well,
connection
there's
with...
a certain, I think the aspect of her that appeals to people is the innocence. She was obviously very young. She was only like 13 or 14 when she started off in this, or
Yeah.
less. And she has this innocence, and she speaks with passion and stuff. And it's her and her future, and she's a symbol in a certain sense, and people are blurring that idea of her being used. Certainly, she's been used as a symbol for those reasons, for the whole renewables and save the planet type thing. But they're mixing it up with her actually knowing what the hell she's talking about, and forgetting that she's only a teenager who doesn't know what she's talking about, and she's just a symbol. You know what I mean? She's not going to save the planet, and nobody else is. So, yeah, it's just. But also, there's a lot of lack of faith in. She's an example of what people turn to whenever there's a collapse of faith or trust in government leadership, actual adult leadership, when it's seen to be extremely corrupt and working against the population. They think they can get Greta to be president or something, and she'll make all the decisions. Can you imagine? God.
Don't forget, though, there's also something kind of like the illusion of crowds. Sometimes a crowd, like that mob surrounded by the police, and I don't know how many people were there to greet her. It makes it look like you're watching that at home in the news. Oh, gosh, I guess a lot of people, maybe most people are behind this. Didn't you find some poll of polls that showed that of all the things, about 15 different topics that people globally were polled on as to what urgently needs to be fixed by their government leaders now.
Right.
Climate change was the last
Yes.
on that,
Yes.
way below everything
Well,
else.
yeah, because it's not relevant to to the average person, right? It's not relevant to their daily lives, and people are suffering. In a lot of people are increasingly, suffering in many different ways, but primarily in when it comes down to it, it's money and jobs and keeping a roof over your head and being able to pay the bills and that kind of stuff. That's obviously first and foremost, or the first and foremost consideration or concern people have. The idea of changing the planet and stuff is only for the people who don't have any of those concerns.
Yeah.
They're the ones who would be to some extent enthusiastic about it. So, but the vast majority of people aren't like that, and they're not concerned about climate change or stopping using fossil fuels or whatever, And I think a lot of people just don't speak up on these topics, But when they're asked directly, they'll tell you what they actually think, and that's what most of the people on the planet actually think, which is this is complete nonsense. It needs to stop, but they don't know what to do about it. They can't do anything about it. They're effectively being held captive by these global politicians who are just pushing this agenda that, like we keep saying, if they continue with it, are going to, if they push through, if they're mad enough to continue to push it through to its final conclusion, they are going to destroy hundreds of millions of lives.
Yeah.
By trying to turn the planet over to, and I mean, I'm not saying that they will turn it over, but in the process, they're going to destroy the global economy. It's still, for me, it's still beyond belief that they will actually go any distance towards doing this.
Yeah.
But
the consistency of their rhetoric now is,
I can't rule it out.
It's kind of a key similarity between the COVID nonsense and this is that it's something you can't see for the most part.
And you can't do anything about it.
Absolutely.
Unless you rely on your government leaders.
Yeah. And so they had to, literally bring in behavioral psychologists at the beginning of this, put them into special psych units attached to government messaging and media, and massively oversell. Like, you can imagine, they have, we've seen the confessions. They literally sat down and said, okay, well, we know this isn't actually the plague of all plagues, but we're going to have to spin this to get people on board with it. Okay. So they know there isn't something real out there on that score that merits the kinds of things they went and did. Well, there's a similarity with the climate thing. You've got most people going, why on earth are they talking about the end of the world when there's no explicit signs of it? You know what I mean? It does beg the question, are they such incredible, seers? Are they actually prognosticating something? But ahead of it arriving?
Yeah.
Because their language, their rhetoric only increases. I think we should play. Pick a choice. We've got Boris Johnson speaking
Boris
at the Colosseum. We've also got Prince Charles with similar rhetoric.
Do both.
Okay.
Do Boris.
That's the last link I sent you, Scott. This is the British Prime Minister 2 days ago choosing to speak to the press.
You said...
Was it his decision? I'm not sure. At the Colosseum, obviously a symbol of the collapse of the Roman Empire. It's 4 minutes. We probably won't listen to all of it, but let's get the gist of what he was saying.
You said these days ahead of us. You've talked about them as if they're a sort of date with destiny, but you've also talked about them as a way station. Which is it?
Well, it's both, because unless you can make sure at COP next week in Glasgow that we keep alive this prospect of restricting the growth in the temperature of the planet, then we really face a real problem for humanity. And I think on the plane yesterday, I tried to suggest to you that civilization could go backwards and history could go into reverse. And here we are, Gary, in the Colosseum of Vespasian. The Roman Empire, they weren't expecting it, went into a reverse, and things, and we had a dark ages. When the Roman Empire fell, it was largely as a result of uncontrolled immigration. People, the empire could no longer control its borders. People came in from the east and all over the place. And
pause it there for a second.
Went into a dark age.
Fact check. That's not what happened. But okay, that is more or less a conventionally accepted historical reason for the collapse of Rome. Barbarian hordes coming in
After collapse.
After collapse. So it's bizarre that he would mix up the metaphors, because he's getting slandered at home mainly by lefties, anyone else who doesn't like him, because, oh, look, he's dog whistling to the right, anti-migration. I don't know why he threw that in there.
But
Because
the migration thing is to do with the increase. The whole idea is increase in temperature, like you said. One aspect, but the main aspect according to them, increase in temperature causes a change in climate patterns, which causes all sorts of crazy weather
Bizarre
happening,
weather
which
events.
causes crop failures, which causes people to leave countries, which causes
maybe
migration.
that's what he was saying.
That is
shortly.
what he's saying. That's the
Okay.
whole idea. That's the whole thing.
Okay. Let's carry on
Yeah.
then. All right.
Well, Europe went into a dark
You
age
used
that
another-
lasted a very long time. And so
You
the
used
point
another
of that is
Yes.
to say that it can happen again. People should not be so conceited as to imagine that history is a one-way ratchet.
You used another analogy on the plane as well. You said we're 5-1 down at half time. It's not maybe your most familiar sport, but people don't come back from 5-1 after half time. How much do people panic?
Not always. They don't, and I think it's the point of that particular metaphor. And I'm going to be humble with you, Gary, and say that I don't perhaps watch enough football, but yes, it's going to be very, very tough to equalise. So it's going to be very, very tough to get the agreement that we need. But what we're trying to do is to get the world leaders to focus on the concrete, tangible,
Exactly, and that's what I want to ask you about. Because you've now got to extract some final promises from people,
yes,
from nations,
Blah,
and they're
blah,
going to turn
waffle,
around and say,
waffle.
"Oh, we've got
Let's leave it
extenuating
there. He's basically said enough there.
Go
Get
straight
the
into
point.
Charles.
Huh?
Go into Charles.
Okay.
Let's get the two of them
well,
together.
I have to.
Get big ears there.
So Prince Charles, I mean, what the hell? Boris, yeah, he's the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Of course, he's going to have stuff to say at the G20 in Rome. But Prince Charles isn't supposed to be. He's supposed to be non-political. But that's the thing, isn't it? That this whole thing is being presented as one big happy family of global leaders. This is about politics. We're just
concerns
doing,
us all.
Yeah. Anyway, this guy is practically like some kind of ambassador for the very topic, which arguably is British establishment policy since the 1970s. Let's have a listen.
Now, after, I suppose, very nearly 50 years of trying to raise awareness of the growing climate and environmental crisis, I'm at last sensing a change in attitudes and the build-up of positive momentum. As you know, listening is often more important than speaking, and I have listened closely to leaders of many countries, particularly Commonwealth nations, whose communities are some of the most climate vulnerable on this earth. It is also impossible not to hear the despairing voices of young people who see you, ladies and gentlemen, as the stewards of the planet, holding the viability of their future in your hands. And I've listened to those leaders of the private sector who are now more and more anxious to invest in the projects and new technologies that could establish a more rapid transition to sustainability.
Okay, that's one of his more sober moments. He's also said stuff like, in the last few years, we have about 100 months left or we're goners. Goners, as in it's over. Literally, it's this year or the next, it's over. What is with the utter definitive urgency behind both that message and Bojo's as well, where he's like, listen, he really genuinely sounds Boris Johnson when he's standing there. He's chosen the freaking Colosseum, of all places, to say it. He seems sincerely pleading, like, look, I know you can't see it now, and people are going, what the hell do they want us to do all these drastic things for when we can't see what the danger they're talking about? But he's saying, I know you can't see it, but we are about to, there's a high risk, have a major civilizational collapse, hence the Rome analogy, any day now. Does he believe that? Is that what's motivating him to go against everything we know he knows to the contrary, that in fact temperatures are cooling? He was writing editorials about it in the Telegraph 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We know he knows better.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously they're being told something. They have inside information. They're being told by advisors. Obviously, Boris Johnson, neither Boris Johnson nor Prince Charles nor Joe Biden or any of them that are speaking publicly on this have really any understanding or any personal understanding that they got themselves. They didn't do the research. They don't know. They're being told this by other people.
Sure.
So the question is, who are those other people and where they're getting information from? There was back, to give you an example, just send to Scotty now. This was back in 2004. It's not the CIA. 2004. So this has been around for a long time. And it's from the Guardian. And this is, so what's it, 17 years ago? You can just throw that up. It's got a blurb in the front of it. It even tells you, actually, at the top. This article is more than 17 years old. Now the Pentagon tells Bush, climate change will destroy us. Secret report warns of rioting and nuclear war. Well, you can forget about nuclear war. Britain will be Siberian in less than 20 years. And threat to the world is greater than terrorism. You just look at the second paragraph. A secret report suppressed by US defence chiefs and obtained by the Observer warn that the major European cities will be sunk and beneath rising seas as Britain is plunged into a Siberian climate by 2020. Siberian climate. And of course, they've spun the whole global warming in recent years to include cooling, right? So it's not just about warming anymore, but they still... It gets too complicated. If you're going to turn around and say it's going to be cooling and warming or warming and cooling, it gets very complicated. It's better to stick to a single message, a single actionable point, something that can lodge in the minds of the population. It's going to get too hot. Sea levels are going to rise and bad stuff's going to happen. So pick one or the other. Don't say both, because people will say, well, cooling and warming, what do you mean? They think they come at it from the point of view that it's all too complicated for the population. And you just got to stick to simple catchphrases, basically, That's what people are getting and have been getting. But that's an example of 17 years ago. Bush was being told, supposedly by the Pentagon, that climate change will destroy us. And they were talking about 20 years, in 20 years, less than 20 years. So in 2020, they were saying. And there will be
widespread rioting. And disruption and conflict.
And they said immigration, wars for water, all that kind of stuff, and mass movements of people across the globe. So they said that 17 years ago. And that was probably one that was a latecomer as well. They probably had other reports before then.
But the social effects that they're saying.
But don't wonder then about where Boris Johnson is getting his information from, when that was being told to Bush 17 years ago.
The thing is that the social division and disruption that will become endemic, that report said, by 2020. They're close. That has happened. But it's happened because of what they're doing.
Right.
It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Well, you could see it.
The X factor is, how in the God's name did they know the climate?
Yeah. Well, that's the big $64 million question, right? Is what models can you run? You're obviously not running any scientific models necessarily, or maybe you are. I don't know how many. Do they have supercomputers and stuff that can delve into this kind of stuff and produce some kind of a report or some kind of an estimation? And does it include all sorts of variables, including like cosmic variables and all that kind of stuff? But apparently they did, and to one extent or another, they did some kind of investigation, and they came up with the idea that back in 2004, and probably beforehand, that 20 years later, like around now, you would have climate change destroying the planet, destroying us, or at the very least, totally upending the whole system and it being chaos. Now, if they take that seriously, I don't know how they got their models or what they're running with. Maybe they're looking at previous historical events or some kind of cycles that there is some kind of a cyclical catastrophe type situation going on the planet, and maybe they believe that. Who knows? But anyway, they're convinced, and they've been telling people, politicians, for a long time that this is the case. And what do they do about that then? Do they say, okay, well, let's just hang around and wait till it happens? You know, do we alert the population? We can't do anything about it if that's the case. If it's some kind of natural, cyclical, environmental catastrophe, there's nothing we can do about it. The best we can do is prepare for it, right? And that might be what you're seeing in terms of what they've done over the past 18 months and in recent years by increasing control,
taxes
over the population,
the costs of things.
Yeah, exactly. To try and
to make life, to force sustainability,
right,
increase poverty.
Yeah, but I don't even know if that's it. Really, it's more. It doesn't really make much sense to me, even this way of thinking about it. But if they expect that something like this is going to happen, there's going to be chaos, food shortages, water wars, mass migration, climate catastrophe, disruption. What do you do if you're in politics and you want to maintain your position and your role as having control over the population? What do you do? Will you lock them down? You teach them what lockdown means. You instill a sense in the population, I suppose, of imminent doom. But that would be almost benevolent in a certain sense, without telling them exactly what was going on.
Imminent doom coupled with there's a way out of it.
Right. Of course, there has to be.
Hitched to us.
Because that justifies their positions.
Yeah.
Because if they were to tell the population that there's no way out of it, that basically this is a cyclical phenomenon that, you know, and it's a natural phenomenon and you all just got to suck it up, then there'll be chaos, right? The explanation or the rationale behind that is if you release that information, there'll be chaos. There'll be rioting and looting in the streets.
But in fact,
social order will break down.
What there would be
people would start to form together into groups or communities and start
people
thinking
go,
about
what do we need you lot for then?
Yeah, and they would self-organize, I suppose, and a lot of them would anyway, you know. But then that means a removal of their positions of power and control over the population. So it is all nefarious in that respect, and it's all self-interested on their part. So, yeah. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But certainly so in that sense, the whole COVID restrictions, COVID being a ruse from the get-go or a means to an end to impose these kind of controls and restrictions on the population makes sense. That's the only thing that really maps to reality. Everybody out there with any sense is looking at the whole, the past 18 months and saying, this is not a pandemic. There's nothing, what they say is going on is not going on. That's not what's happening. But what they have done is terrorize the population, teach them what lockdown means, and condition them to getting to locking themselves in their homes, and kind of Pavlovian programming in a certain sense. So,
what about that? Yeah. Did you see the UN Dino video? Do you want to play that?
Go on if you want to.
Go on. It's just similar messaging, but again, it's confused as hell. Talk about trying to bend reality. It's like you're all doomed unless. Here it is here.
Reptiloid.
There's so many things that can be said about it.
It's not reptiloids, RT, it's reptoids. Anyway, play the video.
Reptiloids at the helm of the UN.
You don't need it. You don't need the explanation. Just play the video. It's self-explanatory, right?
Well, anyone does.
Oh yeah. So a dinosaur walks into the UN basically in this video. CGI dinosaur. Walks up the aisle, people scream. It's basically a velociraptor from Jurassic Park.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now.
Pretty much.
Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, there's so many levels to that one. Subsidizing, imagine you're subsidizing meteors. Well, getting back to the mandate of heaven.
That was a UN-produced production.
Yeah. Getting back to the mandate of heaven, that's pretty much what people are doing. That's what leaders are doing. If you follow that, if you believe in the idea of the mandate of heaven, that's what they're doing right now. It's by creating this, creating the suffering and chaos on the planet by what politicians are doing. They're essentially subsidizing giant meteors. Or they could be subsidizing giant meteors or giant volcanoes or giant earthquakes if there's some validity to the idea of the mandate of heaven. But also, what's the connection? I mean, okay, I know it's dinosaur. They were killed by a meteorite. They couldn't do anything about it. They didn't. Maybe they could. I don't know.
Well, the segue that they got Jack Black in his script to use was that, at least in your case, it's man-made.
Yeah.
You see, that's the special clause for all this. Whenever they say, the scientists who respond or try to over the decades by saying, hey, but hang on a second, objection. There have been warming periods before. As the counter has always been, but this one's special.
Yeah, we're special.
Because the warming now is man-made. It isn't, but that's the special clause in all this. Hence the special pleading in the argument put forth by Velociraptor there. At least you can do something about it. But it's childish, it's dangerous, and it's the complete opposite to reality. If the cyclical catastrophes, like the dinosaurs, and possibly for us, I don't think it's, hopefully it's not extinction level threat, but the UN is claiming that the narrative level to get people behind it, again, the rhetoric is freaking extreme. They're talking extinction now or never.
Yeah, you're going extinct, because you're burning fossil fuels, which is complete nonsense. It's not extinction, obviously. Even if in the worst case scenario, it's not extinction. Extinction of the species on the planet happens through cosmic forces, not through man-made forces. Human forces don't have the ability to extinct every living species or even the human species on the planet. So it's extremist hyperbole, yeah.
Again, though, it seems to be fueled by it. They genuinely think, well, something's coming, and at least the believers,
they feel that something's
we've
coming.
already suspected that the smart ones, they're not all that dumb. The smart ones with the real power and influence will know that no, there isn't anything to be done, but we can at least shepherd the side effects of this as it kicks in, and they hope control enough people and not lose them, so to speak.
Well, they may have the idea that in a situation where there's climate chaos, as per the Pentagon report to Bush 17 years ago, and you have massive immigration across the planet and all that kind of stuff, and crop failures and food shortages, that implies a lot of serious chaos in different parts of the world that are directly impacted by that, and that the best way Well, the real problem there is people, too many people. So if there's some way to like kill them all off or to precipitate that kind of a thing in a managed way, you know what I mean? It's almost like, I think that's the idea that I kind of hit on or settled on, even if it's, you know, just as an idea, is that they see chaos, social chaos, breaking out as a result of these climate events and the climate chaos situation. And rather than just let that happen, which would be in an uncontrolled way, they want to manage it themselves in a controlled way.
Right.
So, you know, move people, you know, I don't know. Well,
condition people such that when the things start becoming obvious and they're seeing them, try and condition them so that what they're seeing is seen through the lens that they put over their eyes.
Yeah, for sure. And also, but also the idea that if you know, if the basic idea is that large numbers of people might die as a result of climate chaos, well then the solution might be to engineer large numbers of deaths via a more controlled mechanism, which would be trying to do away with fossil fuels in a very short period of time, in the process destroying the global economy and causing mass starvation. But if you're initiating it at all, you might have some idea, some measure of control over it, over who comes where, when, whatever. But if you just let it happen, then it'll be completely random and chaotic, and you won't be able to control it. I mean, it's a delusional idea, obviously,
yeah.
but
This
it's
is
the best they got, you know? It's the best they got.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you could just throw all of that out as well and say these people don't really know what they're doing. They're just holding on to some little threads of ideas here and there, but they don't know really what they're doing. And their main thing right now, and it's only a short-term goal that they have, which is maintaining their positions of power and control of the population in whatever way they can, in the context of crazy shit happening all over the planet. How do we maintain day-to-day control for us, keep my position of power and influence, and to hell with the future? That's a more rational assessment of the situation. Because otherwise you get into too much conspiratorial long-term planning and then having control over things that are really aren't under their control, you know what I mean?
You're
Give them
filling
too much power.
You're filling in a lot of blank. You're giving them power.
Giving them too much power.
That they are what they
like,
kind of want to give off, the impression that they're
that
gods.
they have, but they don't have it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anything's supposed to come out of this COP26. Nothing came out of Rome except a global agreement to, Ireland's in trouble, limit any country having anything less than a 15% corporate tax rate. So that was nothing to do on the face of it with the rhetoric surrounding the event, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, just there's one story I saw today, if I can find it, but it was the headlines in the Irish Independent today that farmers were very angry that that they were going to be forced by the government. Farmers in Ireland are going to be forced by the government to reduce their emissions by 30%. And of course, emissions. What does that mean? Well, it means reduction in how often they use their tractors, and how often they use farm machinery, and how much fertilizer they use, all that kind of stuff. So basically, they're saying,
and maybe how many cattle they have.
Yeah, how many cattle they have for sure. It's associated with that whole thing of them talking about reducing the global consumption of meat, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, they're putting stuff like that out there in the name of reducing carbon emissions. They're talking about destroying a significant section of the farming industry, which provides people food. There's no other way to spin that. I mean, there you go. That's it. That's it. The governments right now across the world are pushing the agenda of destroying significant parts of the farming industry at the very least, and that's not to mention all the other industries that would be impacted in the same way. Yeah. Manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. They're pushing an agenda that implies or requires the destruction of major parts of all of the industry in the world that makes life sustainable. So, what's the end result of that? Well, it doesn't take a lot to figure it out. Like,
is genocide?
Well, it's destruction of lives and the social order, and that's what it is. And I'm sure somebody out there might turn around and say that that's not what's going to happen, and that'll be managed and all that kind of stuff. But that implies a faith in political leaders that is not warranted. So I think we're probably on the right side of history, or on the right side of the fence in this respect, in terms of being skeptical about the intention of these people, because there's no reason for anybody to put their faith in politicians, in the sense of those politicians really care about me. You're one of 8 billion people to them. You're a number, nothing more. And if you don't look after yourself, who do you think is going to? If you don't look after yourself and those in your family and your friends, nobody else is going to. You look after each other. You don't, like a child, you don't look up to mommy and daddy government to take care of all your needs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's more and more evidence that these are bad parents, very bad parents, and they really don't care about you. Not only do they not care about you, but they may be malintended towards you. So you better get a clue pretty soon. People better get a clue pretty soon, and wake up to the reality, because there's no longer really any scope to kind of like, fudge the numbers or indulge in narratives or comfortable lies, whatever. I mean, it's getting way beyond that time where you really gotta, it's do or die, possibly literally. Yeah. So happy Halloween.
It's now or never.
Yeah, well, like they say, it's
like
now or
they
never.
Say,
yeah.
But
well, yeah. It's now or never in response to what they're doing. In response to their now or never stance, you have to take the same stance, but in opposition to them, or in terms of reading what they're doing and what the results of what they're doing will likely be. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that'll do, no?
Yeah, that's
for
good.
this Halloween.
We're good.
That's been our Halloween message. It's all pretty spooky and scary.
And a freak show.
Mass murder, yeah. Just reading the comments there.
That's hard to argue. I mean, I really did not want for a long time to ascribe conscious
intent
to that, but
somewhere along the line or up the chain of command,
some of those elites really are like intelligent people, so they've obviously thought about this hard and deep.
And they're doing the best they can. God bless them. Well, you know what? You do the best you can as well then, and focus on, everybody's focused on taking care of you and yours, basically, because that's, and of course, if you're part of a bigger group or a network, then you all help each other, basically, but that's where it's at right now, and we'll stake our claim to that being something close to an objective truth of the situation right now. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for chatting as well. It's apparently it's pretty important for our channel to for there to be plenty of comments in the comment section. We really appreciate it. So smash all those buttons. And if you're doing Halloween, if you're in Whitey West, patriarchy land, then have a good Halloween. Eat some pumpkin or whatever they do. Smash some pumpkins. And we'll be back next week with another show on whatever's been going on between now and then. Okay, so see you later.
Happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Can't stop.